Almost 4 decades after her murder, police identify a suspect in the kidnapping and killing of Jeannie Moore. I'm Alan Janae. Good to have you with us this noon. DNA testing led investigators to Donald Perea, a convicted criminal who died in 2012.
He stood at the back of the church, watching the family weep. He shook her father's hand, offered his deepest condolences, and even shed a tear for the 20-year-old girl whose life had been brutally cut short. But he was not there to mourn. The mystery isn't why he attended the funeral. The mystery is how he managed to look her parents in the eye, knowing that the blood on his hands belonged to their daughter. To understand how a monster hid in plain sight, you have to go back to a humid April night in 1980. Jeannie Moore, a bright, ambitious 20-year-old with her whole life ahead of her, walked out of her job at a local grocery store. She was supposed to catch a ride home. She never made it to her front door. The next morning, a passerby near a secluded woodland clearing spotted a brightly colored piece of fabric sticking out from the brush. The witness rushed forward, hoping it was just discarded clothing. Instead, they stumbled directly into a waking nightmare. It was Jeannie. She had been beaten, terrorized, and left beneath the canopy of trees. The local police department immediately flooded the area, hunting for a transient, a drifter, or a violent stranger who had ambushed her from the shadows. They checked local truck stops. They interviewed known offenders in the area. They collected a single, microscopic sample of biological evidence from her clothing, a pristine genetic signature left behind by the killer. Detectives were certain that with a crime this brutal, the suspect would have a massive, violent record. It seemed like only a matter of time before they matched the evidence to a name. Except when they ran the evidence through their network, they found a problem that stalled the case for 44 years. The database came up entirely blank. The killer didn't have a record. He wasn't a drifter, he wasn't a known felon, and he had completely vanished into thin air. Before we continue, if you enjoy true crime stories where decades-old mysteries are finally solved, make sure you're subscribed to Case Classified. Every week, we uncover the evidence, the investigations, and the shocking breakthroughs that finally bring hidden truths to light. Now detectives were forced to consider a far more terrifying possibility. The killer was someone she knew. They turned their focus to her inner circle, friends, neighbors, and regular customers at the grocery store. They interviewed everyone who attended her funeral, searching for anyone acting overly nervous or suspiciously devastated. They sat across from a young man who lived just blocks away, a man who had known Jeannie's family for years. He answered every question perfectly. His eyes were filled with grief. He was completely cooperative. Without a direct match or a confession, police had no legal right to demand his DNA. They had to let him walk, and that routine interview immediately mutated into a disaster. Because they couldn't breach his privacy, the trail went entirely cold. Decades flew by. The case file was buried under a mountain of newer, fresher tragedies. The grieving parents passed away without ever knowing who took their daughter. The killer had won the ultimate game of hide-and-seek. But then, the rules of reality changed. In the mid-2020s, a dedicated cold case unit decided to bypass the criminal databases entirely. They extracted the degraded biological sample from 1980 and uploaded it to public ancestry websites. Most people think this is where police immediately identified the killer. They didn't. The killer had never uploaded his DNA. He had never taken an ancestry test. The high-tech gamble appeared to end in complete failure. At this point, what would you have believed? That the killer had escaped forever, or that investigators would eventually find another way? Let us know your answer in the comments before we reveal what happened next. Geneticists didn't need the killer. They found one of his distant relatives. Suddenly, investigators were tracking an entire bloodline through historical obituaries, birth certificates, and old census data. They were chasing a ghost through thousands of dead ends, one missing record, one hidden adoption, one mistake. And the entire investigation could collapse. But slowly, the digital net tightened around one specific family branch in Texas. The family tree pointed directly to an 81-year-old man living a quiet, peaceful life. His name was Samuel McCurley. The audience assumes police immediately swarmed his house. They couldn't. They still needed his current DNA. Undercover detectives launched a high-stakes surveillance operation, tracking the elderly man's every move. Finally, he discarded an item into his trash. Detectives collected it and rushed it to the crime lab. It was a flawless match. The DNA from the 1980 crime scene belonged to Samuel McCurley, but as detectives prepared to interrogate him, they realized they were still missing the most disturbing piece of the puzzle. When police finally handcuffed the 81-year-old man, they reopened the original case files from 1980. They expected to uncover a hidden connection, a secret motive, or a carefully constructed alibi. Instead, they discovered something almost impossible to believe. McCurley had been right in front of them the entire time. He was the very same grief-stricken young man detectives had interviewed just days after Jeannie's murder. He had attended her funeral. He had comforted her family. He had looked her parents in the eyes, while carrying the secret that he was responsible for their daughter's death. For 44 years, he believed that if you looked innocent enough, cried at the right moments, and simply outlived the detectives chasing you, the truth would disappear forever. He was wrong. As he sits behind bars in the final chapter of his life, he's left with one reality he could never outrun. Justice doesn't care how long you hide. Sometimes, your own DNA tells the story you spent a lifetime trying to bury. If this case surprised you, subscribe to Case Classified for more unbelievable true crime investigations. And if there's a case you'd like us to cover next, leave it in the comments. Your suggestion could be featured in an upcoming episode. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.